We're talking Giants draft. What else, right? With Ed Valentine of Big Blue View. That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina. Happy to have you with us as always, and thank you so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you are watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And we have a huge week this week. We are in the final days, the final hours of the week, of the days, I should say, before the NFL draft. Big week coming up here on the Locked On Giants podcast. We've got Ed Valentine from Big Blue View, who joins me today. And we are going to talk a little bit about the Giants, the state of the Giants, what's going on, our expectations for the draft, all that good stuff. So, Edward, as always, great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me on, Patty. It's been a while since you and I have done one of these together.
I know. I had to guilt you into this, didn't I?
Yes, you did. I will admit it. Yes, you did.
I'm shameless sometimes. What can I say? So
we've known that for a long time, Patty.
Oh, thanks a lot, buddy. Thanks a lot.
Anytime.
Oh, goodness, Edward. Edward, what am I going to do with you?
Nothing, Patty. I'm just going to be what I am, and I'm not going to change.
Yeah, you are, but we'll talk about this later. I'm sure the listeners don't want to see us battle because it ain't going to get me pretty. But anyway, Ed, let's talk about the state of the Giants. It's amazing. I was thinking back over mock draft season, how far we've come along, where things have gone, the developments that we didn't see popping up, like this situation with Cadarius Toney, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. What has been the biggest twist or turn for you thus far in terms of how it's going to affect maybe what the Giants do over the draft?
I don't know, Patty. I don't know if there's been a twist or turn per se, but I've done enough mock drafts now that everybody gets locked in on certain scenarios, certain players. You've got to have an offensive tackle at number 5 or whatever it might be. And I'm as guilty as the next person, to be honest with you, when it comes to that. But I think the conclusion that I've come to is that there's really no wrong answer for the Giants here in this draft. You can argue that they could use help, that they at least need to supplement, I think, every spot on the roster. So you can argue that there's no real wrong direction for them to go here. I think, like I said, I don't think there's been a real quote unquote twist for me, unless you want to get into the Cadarius Toney stuff. But I think the conclusion that I'm drawing at this point is they can do just about anything and not necessarily be wrong to do it.
Does that include, though, not drafting an offensive tackle in the first round?
I would much prefer that they do that, Patty. I think that you've got 3 guys. You've got, obviously, Evan Neal, Charles Cross, and Ike Ekwonu, in whichever order you choose to put them in. And I think if they sit there at 5 and 7, if they sit there and don't get one of those guys, if one's available, when they pick at 5, I really don't think there's a good excuse for that. I think they have to do that. To me, that's the one thing they really need to do, for the simple reason that when you think about it, there are offensive tackles that people like on day 2. Bernard Rahman, I think, is Daniel Folele from Minnesota is another one. But if you want to make sure that you're going to hit on an offensive tackle, take one early. Don't take a project or a maybe. take one of the top guys. That's where you're far more likely to hit on an offensive tackle. So for me, I think that's the one thing they have to do is come out of round one with an offensive tackle. But as far as any other position, you can argue pretty much for just about anywhere on the roster.
True. And, I wanted to ask you, I mean, we got a little taste of what the Giants might be looking to do this year when we were at the mini camp last week. I know you were there. You were watching. I was watching. Did you come away saying, okay, if I have my druthers for the Giants, I want them to take this position or this particular player for whether it be the defense or the offense, or do you still just say, whatever direction they go is they can't lose?
Well, I don't think what we saw Wednesday changed my opinion any, Patty. I kind of expected, obviously, that the only real team sort of work that we saw was 7-on-7 in shorts with no contact. So I don't think you could get a real flavor for what the Giants needed to do, but I will say this. It was a little bit jarring to see Brian Lewerke, who is really the number 4 quarterback, playing safety during 7-on-7 because there's only 2 safeties on this roster, Patty. There's only 2. And so with experience, I mean, Jaron Williams is a kid that took some snaps, on this during 7-on-7 at safety, and that wouldn't surprise me if that's a permanent move for him. I mean, Jerome Henderson, defensive backs coach, said last year that the kid plays like a safety, so it wouldn't surprise me if the Giants just move him there. But they have to add a safety somewhere somehow because you can't have Brian Lewerke playing safety.
No, you can't. And that is a big problem. And also for the future, because Julian Love's in the final year of his contract, so you got to add to that spot. And I just don't know if it makes sense to move the cornerbacks and stuff around. So while we're on the topic of the mini camp, again, you can't tell a whole lot because they were running around in shorts and just helmets, really, no contact. But I found the offense particularly interesting. Some of the formations we saw, it looked like there were some different formations, different deployments of, like Saquon Barkley, for example, and whatnot. I know there continues to be rumors that Barkley might be on the trade block, but I don't know, man. I watched that and I say, geez, I don't think they have another guy on the roster that can do some of the things that we saw Barkley doing in that practice. Where do you stand on this Barkley situation, especially knowing that this team needs to find cap space? And I don't know about you, but I've looked at it and it's going to be difficult to find it.
Patty, we saw a wheel route on Wednesday. We saw a wheel route where Daniel Jones hit Saquon Barkley, and it was a nice play and all of that. And I agree with you. There's no one else as a running back on this roster with the upside that Saquon Barkley has. There's no one in the draft with that upside either. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't get productivity out of other backs, out of guys in this draft class, for example. I keep looking at it, and I have been on the side of, if there is a trade that makes sense for the Giants, I think they really have to consider moving on from Saquon. I've been on that side of this argument for months, and I don't really see a reason to change that opinion. The fact of the matter is they're in a real serious cap crunch. I don't see a long-term expensive contract for Saquon Barkley in the future, at least with the New York Giants. I just don't see it. I understand how good of a player he can be, but he hasn't been that player since 2018. For me, it just makes sense for the Giants to move on from Saquon, take the cap savings, get whatever they can in draft capital this year, next year, because to me, you keep running the risk of we'll push that decision off. We'll push that decision off. Sooner or later, that decision's going to get made for you, and you're going to wind up getting nothing for Saquon, because I just don't see at this point how you can give him, a long-term second contract at a big dollar value. I just don't see how that's ever going to be possible.
It's not. And by the way, there was the wheel route. There were a few other formations I could see from the backfield that had me going, ooh, that was interesting. So we'll see. Right now in the springtime, it's a time to experiment. It's a time to see what works and what doesn't work. But, take it with a grain of salt, I guess, folks, because they don't have a complete roster.
I think so, Patty. And let's just put it this way. I mean, we all have to believe that Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka have more imagination than Jason Garrett did. So we're going to see some things. We should see some things that we didn't see, from the Giants the last couple of years. But I'm just not going to get married to, they're going to do that because they did it in a voluntary mini camp. It's Brian Daboll keeps saying, what he kept saying to us the other day was it's the second day. We're so far away from playing games. We don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I have to think it's going to be more creative than what we're used to.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, if you're tired with dealing with low energy, poor gut health, or just having to take supplement after supplement, you need to check out AG1 by Athletic Greens. With one delicious and easy to mix scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens for less than $3 a day. Visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network and get a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take advantage of this special offer. All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, BetOnline.net is the only place that offers the best information on the latest odds, contests, and player props for all your sports betting needs. No matter what sport you're into, BetOnline.net has you covered. Plus, they offer everything you need to know for live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head on over to BetOnline.net today to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, a couple other guys, mentioned on the trading block. James Bradbury, are you surprised that he hasn't been moved yet or nothing's been done with that contract? And do you see a scenario, Joe Shane keeps talking about contingency plan. Doesn't say what the contingency plan is, but I think we can both agree that it would be a restructure of some sort. So do you maybe see the Giants keeping him so to avoid creating a hole on the roster? Or do you just say, if you're the Giants, got to move on. We need this money.
Honestly, Patty, I think that Joe is saying what he has to say at this point because he can't look desperate to move Bradbury off this roster. But we already know, that Joe had said way back at the combine that restructuring contracts is a last resort for him. He's already had to do Adoree Jackson. I'll be stunned if he doesn't have to do Leonard Williams at some point, because even if he gets Bradbury off the roster, he still doesn't have enough space to operate through the 2022 season. That gets him enough space to sign the rookie class, but it doesn't get him enough space to operate through 2022. I just don't see how he can keep Bradbury on the roster, but he can't tell us, well, there's no way he can be on this team, because then there's no way he gets anything for Bradbury in a trade. And at this point, I think other NFL general managers are smart enough to understand that the Giants are in a situation where they can't be choosy, where they're not going to be able to get full value for Bradbury. They're going to have to take whatever they can.
Yeah. And it's a shame, too, because he's still a good player.
Sure he is. Sure he is. I found it interesting, though, Patty, that Joe Shane did not categorize Bradbury as a great player the other day. He categorized Bradbury as a good player, not a great player.
Well,
and I think that's absolutely correct. But I did pick up on that. I found it kind of revealing.
well, he was part of a 4-win team last year, so I don't think we can say anybody was great last year that contributed to that 4-win record. Now, all right, let's talk about Cadarius Toney and this report that he could be moved. Now, Ed, you were at the combine. You went to the group session with Joe Shane that was done off camera, off the podium. Shane said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he didn't think Cadarius Toney was a movable piece, if I remember correctly.
Right. He said he didn't think that Cadarius Toney was a tradable player, I think is the way that he put it.
Okay.
And without, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Patty, but I've had a question about that comment ever since Joe Shane made it. You can read that question, or you can read that comment two ways. You can read that comment as he's a player that I want to bang the table for and I want to keep and I'm not trading. Or you can read that comment as I wouldn't mind moving the guy, but there's nobody out there who wants him. There's nobody out there who will make me a halfway decent offer for this guy. And I'm not sure which way to read it. I tend to think it's more the latter, to be honest with you. I tend to think it's more, I can't get more than a day 3 pick for this guy. So what sense does it make for me to make a trade in that instance?
That's interesting. That's a different perspective that I think a lot of people, because a lot of people took it to mean, oh, I'm not moving him. I'm not trading him at all. And then comes...
I take it to mean I can't trade him because nobody will give me anything.
Which is interesting because now you look at some of the other reports that came out. Jeff Howe, I think it was, put out a report saying that half the NFL GMs don't want any part of him and some are like intrigued, but what are they willing to give up? But let's talk about Tony's decision here not to attend the voluntary program. And we do need to stress it's voluntary. We understand that. We understand the definition of voluntary. But this is a new GM. This is a new coaching staff. This is a new system going in. This is the time to learn, to understand, to get your playbook. And the longer this kid goes by being absent, and I want to stress here, we don't know the reason why he's being absent. I reached out to his agent to try and get some kind of a statement, and the agent did not respond to me, which I'm kind of wish he had, because it could have put an end to all the speculation. But anyway, so you have the optics now that don't look good, especially, Tony's got a rap career on the side. I think he just put an album out. I don't know exactly when. And then you see all these social media posts that he's putting out there. Ed, what do you take away from this whole situation? First off, do you think he is indeed on the trade block? And secondly, what do you make of this whole situation, how he's handling it?
Well, let me start with whether or not I believe the report, Patty. And I wrote at Big Blue View Sunday morning that I have no reason not to believe that there is truth to the fact that the Giants would at least talk to other people. They would at least talk to teams. They would at least explore the market and see what they can get for him. I understand Pat Leonard is a somewhat controversial reporter on the Giants beat. I get that. He's been right sometimes. He's been wrong other times. But, I checked around a little bit, and the people that I talked to, no one was surprised by this report. No one was surprised by the idea that the Giants would be open to moving on from Cadarius Toney. So I have no reason to doubt that there's truth to it. Now, will they be able to trade Toney? We will have to see. As for the whole situation, I go back to last year, Patty, and you were in a lot of these same press conferences that I was in. How many times going all the way back to last spring did we hear Thomas McGahee? Did we hear Joe Judge? Did we hear other Giants coaches say the thing that we need from Cadarius Toney is for Cadarius Toney to learn to be a professional, to gain the respect of his teammates and his coaches, to become a reliable player and a reliable person. We heard those things way back in the beginning, way back shortly after he was drafted. And for me, the truly telling thing was the last time we talked to Thomas McGahee in late December, Thomas McGahee was still talking about Cadarius Toney needing to gain the trust and respect of his teammates and learning to be a professional, which tells me that no progress was made in that area. And that's alarming. And as you said, Patty, you've got a new head coach and a new general manager, and it's not even about the playbook. It's not even about all of that. It's about, look, this is a kid who missed 6 games. He probably missed more practices last year than he was involved in. He had his social media missteps. He had COVID twice. He did nothing to earn the cachet to make his own decisions at this point and say, well, I've been in the league 10 years. I know my body. I can set my own schedule. I know how to get ready for the season. To me, he hasn't earned that right, Patty. He's got teammates like Nick Gates, who probably won't play this year. He's got teammates like Shane Lemieux, who's in camp coming off an injury. He's got teammates like Kenny Golladay, who's saying, I'm here because it means something to me. I'm here because I want to be better than I was last year. And it's about that first impression with a new coach and a new GM. And it's about proving to your teammates and to your organization that you want to be there for them, that you want to be the player they drafted you to be. And this, to me, yes, it's voluntary. And as you said, we understand what voluntary is. But to me, this is an indication that Cadarius Toney is still about Cadarius Toney, and he hasn't grown or learned from last year.
Yeah, and that is alarming, And then again, you look at some of the social media posts that he puts out, and it's like, dude, come on. Sensitive much? It's like...
He pays attention to what's said about him. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man, And then, when I hear Kenny Golladay stand up there and say, oh, me and Shep are going to yell, that being Sterling Shep, are going to, say something to him, or we'll help him get up to speed. These guys have to get up to speed on their own. The last thing they need is to be worrying about getting another teammate up to speed.
Well, the other alarming thing about that, Patty, is did you or did you not have the impression that none of those guys has actually talked to Cadarius Toney for months now? Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit concerning as well.
Yeah. I mean, the mere fact that Kenny Golladay, he said, oh, I talked to him, but, and Kenny, sadly, he didn't even know that the guy didn't have his playbook. So
right.
He kind of got caught trying to cover his tracks, so to speak. So, yeah, that was concerning. And, just, it's a distraction. It can, maybe he shows up for the OTAs. I don't know if he's still on this roster, but if he doesn't, the longer he stays away, the more of a distraction this becomes. And that's the last thing I would say Joe Schoen and Brian Dable want to start off their tenure.
We all see the talent, Patty, but that kind of a thing where you've got to deal with this all the time, is not the way that these guys want to start, their new regime. It's not the way they want to enter the season, with guys being asked about this all the time, with having to deal with this all the time. I would love to know, Patty, if Cadarius Toney was on or off Buffalo's draft board a year ago. I would love to know. If I could have been a fly on the wall, if I could go back and find that draft board, I would love to know if the Buffalo Bills, where obviously Joe Shane and Brian Daboll were a year ago, I would love to know if they would have touched him.
I was surprised the Giants took him as high as they did. I had him as a day 2 prospect, and even then I was like, I had question marks about certain things with him.
Yeah, I love the move that the Giants made, Patty. I love the trade down. I love adding picks. It's something that I wish the Giants had done more often in the Gettleman tenure and in the Jerry Reese tenure too, to be honest with you. It's something that I like. I love the idea. I just wasn't crazy about the pick.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I mean, he came with all sorts of maturity red flags, some injury stuff too, and all of that stuff is being proven out at this point. And listen, none of us were completely grown up when we were in our early 20s. None of us were. And you want to give the kid the benefit of the doubt, because let's be honest, he's still a kid. Mm-hmm. But he's a kid who this organization put a lot of faith in by making that pick. And right now he's just hasn't shown that he understands that he has a responsibility to more than just himself.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, with the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, there's only one place to find what you need quickly for your vehicle, and that's at RockAuto.com. Rock Auto is a family business with over 20 years of offering competitive pricing on thousands of parts for every make, model, and manufacturer. Check out their website today, and don't forget to write down Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car or truck will ever need. RockAuto.com. All right, Ed, final question for you as we get ready for the draft in a couple of days. What are you expecting from this draft, if anything, in terms of maybe a certain player, how the draft board's going to fall? What would you like to see the Giants come out with? We talk about best player available versus need, which I think, there's the two marry together. So what are you hoping or expecting to see happen to make this team better?
I'll answer that question 2 ways, Patty. My round 1 home run draft scenario has been for weeks now, if the Giants stay at 5-7, has been whichever offensive tackle they prefer, or whichever one is left out of Charles Cross, Evan Neal, and Ike Ekwonu. I mean, if I had my druthers, I would take Ekwonu, but I won't complain about any of those 3 guys. My home run scenario is one of those tackles and Sauce Gardner. Okay. That's my home run scenario, because it gives the Giants the right tackle, and it gives the Giants the guy who is cornerback 1 in this draft, and a guy with the perfect skill set for Wink Martindale as a press man cover cornerback. I think that for me, that's the home run scenario. But what am I expecting in this draft, Patty? What I'm expecting is to be completely blown away by whatever happens, because you and I know that the draft is an unpredictable beast. And to me, this year, more than any year that I can remember, I mean, Patty, as we sit here and record this, can you tell me for sure that you know who's going to be the first pick in the draft?
No.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, I think it's going to be Aiden Hutchinson, but it might be Trayvon Walker, and it might be Ike Ekwonu, and it might be Evan Neal. So who the heck knows? And can you guarantee me that there isn't that any of these teams will trade up for a quarterback? And the thing of it is, I'm sure that my draft board would look way different than your draft board. I know that my mock draft looks way different than the mock draft that Chris Flum at Big Blue View is going to post here in a day or two. And I think that I've probably heard 75 names of guys who are guaranteed to be first-round picks. Guaranteed to be first-round picks, which means some of those guaranteed first-round picks are going to go in the third round. Okay? So, and I just expect to be sitting there watching things unfold on Thursday night and going, are you serious? Did that guy actually go there, or did so-and-so actually last until the 30th pick of the draft? I expect to be just blown away, because I think this draft is so unpredictable, and there's so much disagreement about the talent in this draft that I think we're all going to be blown away by what we see.
And that's because this is such a deep draft class. I mean, my gosh. And that's a result of, COVID and guys getting an extra year of eligibility. And now it's like you're going to have guys taken on day 3 that should have technically gone maybe the end of day 1, day 2, or, somewhere in day 2. So it's just going to be such a wild event. But you know what, Ed? I don't know about you, but I'm kind of glad mock draft season is coming to a close. It feels like it's just been a suspenseful television series. It's finally going to wrap up starting Thursday, a special 3-day event. And we're going to finally get some answers. And I think the answers are going to tell us a lot about what Joe Schoen and what Brian Daboll envision for this team moving forward.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's interesting. But Patty, in terms of mock drafts, see, by Friday, we get to start 2023 mock drafts.
Count me out. I'm sitting this one out, man. I know you'll probably put a way too
No. I'll leave that for Todd McShay and Mel Kiper. I am not. I don't even, Patty. It took me long enough to learn the names of the guys that are going to be in this draft. I haven't even. I couldn't even tell you. Beyond Bryce Young, the quarterback from Alabama, I couldn't even tell you who's going to be in next year's draft.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, we got a late start with the GM and the head coach search that we had to go through. That, I don't know about you, but that delayed my learning about this class, by a few weeks.
Quite a bit. Yep.
Well, Edward, it's going to be an interesting 3 days. It starts on Thursday. I know I will be there. I'm assuming you will be there as well, if not for all, the whole thing. So there'll be plenty of downtime in between. We'll figure out what we'll do in between picks and whatnot. So you ready for it, my friend?
I'm always ready for it, Patty. I'll be trying to squeeze in some golf this week. A little golf, a few naps, try to get ready. But hey, I'm old, Patty. I gotta save up some sleep when I can.
Oh man, you're a piece of work. Truth be told, I'm gonna probably sneak in a nap on Thursday too, Thursday and Friday, because they're long nights. So we want to be fresh, and I don't want to have dark circles under my eyes when I have to tape videos and stuff like that. So,
Patty,
right, Ed,
Patty, nothing helps me anyway when it comes to the videos. It is what it is. So,
you could always rely on makeup, I suppose.
I don't know about that.
I try to stay away from it, but it is what it is. But all right, Ed, before we say goodbye, let everybody know what you got coming up this week on Big Blue View.
Well, we'll be releasing our big board. We'll be putting out our last couple of mock drafts, finishing up our position preview series, just about anything and everything we can think of in terms of draft coverage. And we've been doing it for months now. So if you haven't read what we've got, you can check our draft hub page to catch up on all of our coverage. And Chris Flum has now posted, I think, I've lost count, but I think it's very close to, if not more than 100 prospect profiles. So we've got anything and everything you can that you would need to be ready for Thursday night. You can find at Big Blue View.
All right, sounds good. And also you can find stuff on Giants Country, as y'all know, as well as here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Want to thank y'all for tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Tomorrow night, we have a special live podcast on the draft eve. The entertainer is going to join me. We're going to go live. We're going to take your questions. We're going to talk draft. We'll talk Toney. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about that's Giants related. So that's going to kick off 8 o'clock tomorrow. Make sure you check that out on YouTube. And for those of you who can't make it, we'll also have the audio available for you on all our audio platforms. So we look forward to that. Until then, everybody, again, thank you for tuning in and have a great one. We will talk to you again tomorrow.